My name is Dr. Jim Craig, and I practice at Dental Group. My approach to dentistry begins with sincerely listening to the patient and wanting to find out more about where they're coming from and what they're looking for and what they want. I thrive on that, though. I love the challenge. I love creating an environment where people are surprised at how comfortable they are. I like to put together some options for the patient because dentistry can be expensive. Dentistry can be scary.
On a crisp morning in Aurora, Colorado, 43-year-old Angela Craig, accompanied by her brother, checked into the University of Colorado Hospital. Angela told staff that she had been suffering from dizziness and headaches. She was taken to an examination room for an evaluation, where her husband, James Craig, soon joined her. He was concerned. But was his concern for his wife? Or rather, was it for himself? I'm your host, Dr. Tophat Shadow. And this is The Shadow Self. James and Angela Craig had been married for more than 2 decades and had 6 children together. Angela was an active member of her church, filling many positions including choir director, teacher, and youth organization leader. She was known by many for her quick wit, playful sense of humor, love of animals, and dedication to her family. She had a reputation for being a person of great warmth and forgiveness, and as a family history consultant, she took a deep interest in working on her own family's history. Angela seemed to possess many qualities that one might hope for in a friend, a neighbor, or spouse. James, known by his patients as Dr. Craig, ran a dentistry with his close friend and business partner, who we shall call Richard. James was an accomplished dentist who had garnered several accolades as a professional, including teaching for 3 years as an associate professor at the University of Missouri School of Dentistry. He was surrounded by a large family, in a close-knit community, and with a strong circle of friends. He had 6 children and a wife who was unequivocally dedicated to him. It seemed James had the American dream folded up into the palm of his nitrile glove. But, as so often is the case with those who appear to have it all figured out, there was a shadow lurking beneath James's polished veneer. A shadow that had emerged in recent years and seemed only to be growing stronger. According to Angela's sister, approximately 5 years earlier, James had secretly drugged Angela. While it did not lead to serious effects, it certainly led to her wanting answers from her husband. According to her, James's explanation for this was that he planned to go into the bathroom and give himself a lethal injection of another substance. He said that he had drugged her so she wouldn't find him, nor would she be able to save him, which would give the lethal drugs enough time to kill him. Whether or not this was his true intention, an incident like this would most certainly damage the trust of any spouse. And this was not all that Angela had to cope with. James had allegedly told her he'd been addicted to pornography since he was a teenager and had gotten involved in multiple extramarital affairs. Still, Angela found the strength to carry on and keep her family unit together. The couple had been together since 1999, and she still had James saved as the boy on her phone. In fact, in more recent text messages to James, Angela had expressed her deep love for him. Perhaps Angela, being a woman of deep faith, felt that the strength of her love and dedication could bring James back around, and that whatever marital problems they were trudging through would find resolve once they made it beyond these troubling times. Sadly, their troubles would only become compounded, resulting in a callous act that would be impossible for the couple to resolve. After consuming a protein shake prepared by her husband, James, Angela Craig began suffering from a severe headache and dizziness. Accompanied by her brother, she checked into the University of Colorado Hospital in downtown Aurora. She was taken to an examination room for an evaluation, where her husband soon joined her. He was concerned. But what was more concerning was the fact that only 1 week prior, on March 6th, Angela had checked into the same hospital with similar symptoms. After being cleared that time, she'd been released, but would return again 3 days later when the symptoms re-emerged. This time, doctors monitored her for 3 days before releasing her again. All the while, they remained unable to determine what was causing Angela to feel this way. Now, as Angela lay in a hospital bed for the 3rd time, her condition began deteriorating. She was vomiting, and her blood pressure began to plummet. By 2 p.m., her oxygen level had plummeted as well. She began having a seizure, and soon she had increased intracranial pressure and no pupil reaction. The doctors still had no answers as to why this 43-year-old woman's health would deteriorate so rapidly. They were forced to place Angela on life support. A few days prior to this, one of James's colleagues at the dentistry office contacted the office manager and notified them that on March the 6th, the first day Angela had become ill and gone to the hospital. She was working late at the dental office and saw James return to the office after hours. She explained that she had seen him using an exam room computer with the lights off, which was odd because she knew he had his own office with his own computer. Plus he had a personal laptop that he typically took to and from the office. She left and about 30 minutes later received a text from James saying he would soon be receiving a personal package in the mail and that she should not open it. That package arrived on March the 13th, and as James had strictly instructed, the office manager did not open it. However, being that the package was unmarked and quite discreet looking, another employee decided to do an unboxing. When the office manager looked inside, she saw a biohazard sticker and the words potassium cyanide printed on a circular canister. She sealed it back up and placed it in James's office. When she later researched potassium cyanide and its harsh effects on a human, she realized that Angela Craig had experienced those same effects. Naturally, this made the manager extremely suspicious of James. It seemed James was trying to lock the door to a room that held a very dark secret. However, now that a sliver of light had found its way into that dark room, it was inevitable that more light would eventually be shed. Alarmed by what she had discovered, the office manager informed James's business partner, Richard, of the cyanide purchase. Richard shared the information with one of the nurses who was bedside with Angela. The nurse immediately called the police to tell them what she had heard. Now, a case was forming, and it was being placed in the hands of the Aurora Police Department's Major Crimes Homicide Unit. Detectives were ready to drill down, with James Craig as their primary suspect, but in order to get a judge to sign a search warrant, they would first need to gather evidence. James, unaware that both his manager and his partner knew about the cyanide, happened to call Richard shortly after he'd told the nurse about the package. James said that he'd heard some disturbing information. He then asked Richard if he'd said anything to the hospital staff. Richard replied that he had indeed spoken to hospital staff and that he was aware of a suspicious package that had been delivered to the office. James insisted that the package was a ring he had purchased to surprise Angela. Richard knew this was it. He wanted James to come clean, but getting him to do so was like pulling teeth. He rejected James's explanation and asked him why in the world he would buy a can of potassium cyanide. James recanted his ring story and admitted the package had indeed contained cyanide, but that it was Angela who had asked him to order it. He then said he didn't think she would actually take it, implying that she was potentially suicidal. They ended their conversation, and a short while later, James texted Richard, making an urgent plea for him not to speak with law enforcement. Detectives met with the dental office manager, who discovered the package of cyanide. She said she knew that on the morning of March 6, the first day Angela Craig went to the hospital, Angela had exercised with James. He had made a protein shake for her, and after drinking it, she began feeling faint and dizzy. This was when James drove her to the hospital for her first visit. The office manager then recalled a conversation she'd had with James shortly after, in which he talked about how he thought Angela might not survive. Strangely, he then pivoted the discussion to business matters pertaining to the dental office. Next, detectives spoke with James's business partner Richard. Richard revealed that he and James had been partners since August 2022, when he acquired James Craig's dental practice. Unbeknownst to them, the business had been struggling financially. Apparently, James had filed for bankruptcy in 2021 and was on the verge of doing it again. In addition to his money troubles, Richard said that James and Angela were having marital problems. These bits of information gave detectives a potential motive. Finally, the detectives met with a caseworker from Child Protective Services, who expressed her concerns over statements that James had made when she went to check on the children. According to her, James alleged that Angela was suicidal and that she had been for some time. James claimed that he'd had to revive her several times over the previous months. He also said that he'd asked for a divorce in December 2022, after which Angela's depression and suicidal ideations began to increase. James further claimed that Angela had been intentionally overdosing and that he decided not to report any of the incidents. Nor did he seek professional help for her. One of the more perplexing statements he made to the caseworker was that he was sure Angela's toxicology would come back positive for something, but he wasn't sure what. In the opinion of the caseworker, James's whole story about Angela being suicidal was simply an attempt to build a cover story for what really happened. This gave detectives enough to get 3 search warrants issued and signed. One for James Craig's home, one for the dental office, and one for a friend whom James had briefly stayed with. Upon executing the search warrants, police were able to seize James's cell phone, wallet, laptop, credit cards, iPad, home surveillance cameras, an office computer hard drive, multiple types of powdered proteins, 2 unlabeled plastic bags filled with a white powdery substance, and a portion of substances that had been vacuumed up. While going through the 2 cell phones seized in the first search warrant, police found a conversation that occurred on March the 6th, when Angela Craig first began to feel ill. In that conversation, Angela wrote, "I feel drugged." To which James replied, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you. I am super worried though. You really looked pale before I left, like, in your lips even." Angela later texts, "My whole body's feeling heavy." Craig replies, "Something's really wrong, I'm coming home." Out of what appears to be concern for her husband, Angela tells him, "You don't have to miss work today. We don't have anywhere to go today, and the girls and I will be fine. I'm starting to think I'm just sick, and this is part of it." 3 days later, after much back and forth, Angela texts, "I'm cold, super tired, weak, shaky, and dizzy." To which James asks if she's super thirsty. James complains about having a hard time concentrating, and Angela apologizes. "I'm sorry, I'm just sleepy." James replies, "That's okay, you don't have to say sorry." "Man. Baby, you've got to stop scaring me like this. I love you so much, and I'm not used to all this excitement." The conversation goes on, and Angela continues thanking James for his undying support, apologizing for the inconvenience she's causing him, and professing her love for him. Digital forensics then conducted an initial history search of the phones, laptops, and the iPad seized during the searches, in which they found that James had a primary email which he used for business. Upon searching through the hard drive they had seized from the dental office exam room, they found that there was another email account from which a user called Jim and Waffles had several poison-related search inquiries. How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? Is arsenic detectable in autopsy? What can you use arsenic for? Chemical suppliers in Aurora. A YouTube video entitled "Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Show No Sign of Foul Play" had also been clicked on. And if there's any doubt that Mr. Waffles was planning something diabolical, it would be removed like a layer of plaque after they discovered an Amazon order of 10 grams of 100% arsenic metal crystalline metalloid to be delivered to the Craig household. The item listing warned that if swallowed, it could be fatal. The total cost of the item was $13. Lastly, forensics found that another video had been viewed online. This one explained how cyanide is difficult to detect, and by the time doctors can diagnose that somebody has ingested it, it's likely too late to save them. Browsing history showed that after the video was viewed, an order for Sigma 20781025G was placed from a chemical company. Detectives Yahooed it and found that it was another name for cyanide. The cyanide being ordered could not be shipped, however, until the company learned what the customer was intending to use it for. They sent James a form to fill out, and he responded via email, saying he was a surgeon performing a craniofacial reconstruction and was using the chemical to check and see if it will help with the layering of alternative metals. And that if successful, the information would be published as a paper in the National Institutes of Health. He provided his license number and business email, although he was still communicating under his Jim and Waffles email address. Evidence of how Angela became ill was growing, but detectives needed to get to the root of why James had allegedly taken these horrible actions. Their question of why would be answered when they discovered a trail of email conversations between Jim and Waffles and an orthodontist from Austin, who we shall call Crystal. According to the police affidavit, the emails were intimate in nature and contained highly explicit conversations. They also contained travel plans, which showed Crystal flying from Austin to Denver on March the 8th through the 10th. The affidavit reiterates that Angela Craig was in the hospital between March 9 and 14, meaning that while his wife lay in a hospital bed fighting for her life, James was trying to arrange a get-together with Crystal. It should be noted that there is no suggestion Crystal had any inkling of Craig's alleged nefarious scheme to poison his wife so they could be together. In fact, after finding out about Angela's condition, Crystal emailed James, expressing her deep concerns, stating that what he was having to go through must be very hard. Angela Craig had checked into the hospital feeling dizzy, and only 3 days later, on March the 18th at 4:29 p.m., she was pronounced brain dead. After Angela's passing, James refused to grant doctors the authority to conduct an autopsy on her. Angela's own family pleaded with James to allow for an autopsy in case the cause of her illness had been genetic. But James argued that if doctors were unable to find the cause of Angela's sudden illness while she was alive, then they should not be allowed to poke holes in her when she was dead. He was arrested the same day by Aurora Police on first-degree murder charges. He currently sits in jail, awaiting trial. Although James has not yet been convicted, the thorough job of the police in gathering and studying the evidence led to these closing words in the police affidavit. Based on the totality of the investigation, James has shown the planning and intent to end his wife's life by searching for ways to kill someone undetected, providing her poisons that align with her hospitalized symptoms, and working on starting a new life with person D. Your affiant finds there is more than enough preliminary evidence sufficient to arrest James Craig with premeditated first-degree murder. Time will soon tell. If found guilty of this heinous crime, James will likely spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. Meanwhile, Angela's children and her extended family will have to live on in the aftermath of the destructive and devastating actions that led to her untimely death. Within each of us exists a narcissist self, a self that seeks to put one's own interests before the interest of others. As we grow beyond our youth, most of us learn to discipline the narcissist within and to consider the perspectives of others before making important decisions. There are some, however, who never learn this. Some who become so wrapped up in their own desires that they lose all empathy or understanding for anyone who isn't contributing towards the attainment of said desires. And the ones who are truly at risk are the people who, often inadvertently, stand in the way of the narcissist's ability to satisfy their desires. The narcissist is willing to destroy these people who they feel are holding them back. They do not consider the feelings of these people, they simply want to get them out of the way. The human psyche can be extremely flawed. This is an example of that. This is the darkest layer of the shadow self. Don't forget to click on the digital icon that resembles a fist with its thumb sticking up, as well as the icon labeled subscribe. I've been your host, Dr. Tophat Shadow, and this is the Shadow Self.